Hey everybody, I'm here with the chickens today, and as a lot of you know, there's been talk of the Tractor Supply chicken feed causing chickens to not lay eggs, and we were just a little late to figure that out, so we have not had eggs until now for about 6 or so months. Just to go over the story of how we didn't react quicker, is because I went on a trip about July to go see family, and I was gone for a couple of months because we hadn't seen them for like a year, so we made it count, went on a good long trip. And while I was gone, my husband had told me that we were getting less and less eggs, and his assumption, because we do free range our birds, is that they were laying eggs in other places and that we had some eating eggs, but it got down to where we had 0 eggs being laid. And by the time I got back home, which would have been about September, the chickens were starting to go through their molt. We were coming into winter, and so I just figured, they tend to stop laying eggs during that time. And it was about in December that I started seeing the whole Tractor Supply feed thing going on, and we were still in winter, so I still didn't think much of it. We weren't feeding that main feed that was being talked about. Once we started coming into February, a couple of our girls did start laying eggs again. I don't know what brand of food we were feeding at the time, but it was our new hens who had never laid before. So we were getting a blue egg from that blue girl there, and then one of the speckled Sussex that I have started laying eggs because we saw her scratching in the box a lot and figured out that she started laying eggs. Now, they were laying for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it stopped again. We were getting 0 eggs. And that's where I, kept seeing the feed videos and was like, okay, enough's enough. I pulled their feeder out, and I did what a lot of people were doing, was with just rice and beans. I was feeding them my sprouting mix because that's what I give them every day, and then they have the other feed as kind of a supplementary thing. So just to fill in the gaps of whatever they're not getting from the sprouts. But apparently that wasn't enough. I think part of it might have been protein, because I do put sprouted peas in their feed for protein, but they don't tend to like the peas. And so I think that's where the beans kind of help fill in those gaps. But just like everybody else, I'll show you how the days kind of went from day 1 to day 8, but we did start seeing eggs again. Especially by like day 4 is when I was like, all right, yep, this is working. We're seeing more eggs. I don't know that I want to continue to make the food. Other people have also found success in changing the food over to a different brand, but I will show you the brand we were feeding when we were not seeing any eggs. All right, I'm in my shipping container, so I'll try to get this lighting right, but this is the chicken feed that we were feeding when they were not laying eggs. So the Homestead Layer Crumble. I did also buy the Do More Organic that it's not opened, but it looked like it was a good deal when I was looking in there. And so I haven't tried the organic feed yet. I may give it a try and see if we revert to seeing no eggs again, or what's going to go on there. So, and I'm back. So, long story short, took them off the store-bought feed, started making my own feed, and they are laying eggs now. I don't think I want to continue making their food, because it does take time to do and prep every single night for them. I tend to prep it the night before. My husband's the early bird. He gives it to them in the morning, and they do love it. So I'll probably continue to do it when I can, but I also feel like I need to track down a food that does not stop them from laying eggs, just so if we do go out of town and have somebody watching the birds, they're not having to feed them. But I will go over what exactly I am feeding them proportions wise, and go over the simple version and then the complicated version, because I tend to complicate things. Okay, so like I said, the basics of what I do is the rice, beans, and sprouting mix. So with the beans, this is for 6 chickens. I do 1 cup of beans, and it's a bean mixture of kidney beans, black beans, and chickpeas. And I did, we just so happen to have the actual real beans just in bulk in our stock. And so it takes probably 3 hours to cook those. I make sure they're cooked well enough to where they are soft, because I've noticed the chickens are not a super huge fan of the beans. So I do a cup of beans to 3 cups of rice, or basically 3 cups of carbs. So, you know, if I have some leftover macaroni, it'd be cup of macaroni, 2 cups of rice. It's just 3 cups total of rice or macaroni. And my rice mixture, like I said, we've kind of got bags of this stuff around. So it's a mixture of white rice, brown rice, and then a little bit of lentils and quinoa. So it's 3 cups of that mixture. And then I have my sprouting mix. I just do the 1 quart mason jars. So it's probably a cup and a half of the dry mixture, and then by the time it's done sprouting, you're looking at about 3 to 4 cups of finished sprouted mix. And so that, and then I do add a tablespoon of kelp. So that's the basics. I don't feel like that is completely, you know, a complete diet. And once the birds are able to free range more and things start growing, I mean, they're free ranging now, but everything's dead. So I suspect I should be able to cut back on that amount once things start growing. But to balance it out a little bit more, I'll add a little bit more variety. So I'll do a sprinkle of rolled oats, a teaspoon of chia and flax seeds, about a tablespoon of black oil sunflower seeds. Occasionally, I'll do a tablespoon of Molly Herbal's deworming formula that I have. It's just a preventative to make sure the chickens are free of parasites. A sprinkle of oregano, just the seasoning. Again, it's good for getting rid of any intestinal parasites. A teaspoon of moringa leaf powder, which is, if you don't know, is full of good essential vitamins and minerals. It's very good for people. I happen to have some on hand, so I started adding that to the mix. And very, very rarely, maybe once a week or so, I may add just a sprinkle of salt, because when they're not getting the commercial feed that does have salt in it, they are free ranging, so they have access to the ground, and so there's probably salts in the ground. But yes, I'm very careful about the salt, but like about once a week or so, I'll randomly do a sprinkle of salt just to make sure they are getting something. And again, I'm not a super huge fan of the beans. You don't have chickens out there in the wild eating beans. In fact, if you don't cook beans, they're toxic. And speaking from experience, I didn't realize that and just kind of soaked some and ate them on a salad, and I was throwing up about an hour later. Like, they can kill you if you eat too many in one sitting that are not cooked. So I don't see that as a very natural protein for your birds. So I did eventually go out and buy mealworms, and so I will do a 1/4 cup of mealworms in addition to the beans. So they have the option still, if they need more protein still, they've got the beans. And then I did get some wild-caught sardines, so I'll give them about a can a week, and I split that can into 2 different days. So it's about 2 to 3 sardines for the 6 chickens in a day. And that seems to be a good amount of food. By the time we get to the end of the day, there's just a few beans left. Like I said, the beans, they're not super for, but they will eat them. But that's usually what's left in their bowl at the end of the day. For the sprout mix, I will link the recipe that I use down below. It's still the one that I've been using from years ago. It's basically wheat, barley, oats, peas, some black oil sunflower seeds, sorghum or millet, and organic corn. I try to do as organic as I can with all of these, and best place I've been able to find these is from Azure Standard, where you can buy bulk organic for a pretty good price, especially if you buy the version that's specifically for animals. We're at about noon right now, and this is how much they've eaten so far. It looks like they've eaten most of the sprouts. I don't see any of the mealworms, so it looks like it's mostly just the rice and beans, and they will eat this down to just a few beans. I mean, the coop is still kind of lined with some of the beans that they tend to leave at the end of the day. But yeah, before bedtime they kind of polish off everything else, and it's just down to some beans that are left. And that about does it for this video. I'm pretty sure I covered everything. I'm hoping this whole thing with the chicken feed gets resolved so that we don't have to worry about what we're feeding and can have our happy hens laying eggs like they're supposed to. But that does it, and we'll see you in the next video.